Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I am the Campaign Marketing Manager here at eLearning Brothers. Today's session is going to be all about Lectora-19, and we'll be talking about the eLearning Brothers authoring suites as well. This session will be recorded. We'll be emailing a copy of that recording out to everybody who has registered, so you can keep an eye out for that. We'll also be posting a copy of this recording on our YouTube page and on our blog at blog.elearningbrothers.com. So you can find that there in the future as well. Of course, it'll be in your email at that point. So lots of different places to find this in the future. If you have questions or comments during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer your questions in the questions panel or during the webinar. So feel free to use that questions panel as you need it. We'll get to as many of those as we can. If there's some questions that we don't get to or that we are just not able to answer live, we will try to get those answers for you afterwards and then reach out to you so we can have a conversation offline. All right, so we have a great guest with us today. We've got Bill Milstead, our senior e-learning developer. Thanks for joining us, Bill. We're excited to hear what you have to share and excited to learn about what's new in Lectora-19 and some of these new features. But first, let's really quickly talk about what launched on Tuesday. So I'm gonna change what's displaying. So on Tuesday, we launched the eLearning Brothers authoring suites. It's a combination of Lectora, the eLearning Brothers Asset Library, and CenarioVR. And if you are interested, it also includes ReviewLink, which is great. I mean, that's been a thing with Lectora for ages. So sometimes we mention it, sometimes we don't. It's got ReviewLink as well. The important part is that the Gold Suite with this package is only $12.99, which is ridiculously affordable considering what used to be shared. So when I mentioned that you get all four of those items, those are in the Platinum Suite here on the right side, which is $15.99. That's Lectora and ReviewLink and the Asset Library and CenarioVR at $15.99. If you're not a CenarioVR person, and you may not be because this is very much a Lectora group that we're speaking to today, that Gold Suite there in the middle, which includes the online version of Lectora, the desktop version of Lectora, ReviewLink, the Asset Library, which includes in-app access to all of the Lectora goodies, but also full access to the Asset Library, which includes just tons more assets as well that you might want to use for other projects outside of Lectora, which is really cool, and that's only $12.99 a year. If you visit elearningbrothers.com, there's an authoring suites button here at the top, or you can click right on the ad, like I said at the top, right on that banner image. And then you can really break down just down below here what they were priced at before versus what they are priced at in the packages. So if you're just looking for more information on how to save money in working in Lectora, the new version of Lectora 19, which we're going to dive into here in just a moment, and all of the other cool things that we've added, including making CenarioVR way affordable. And I don't know if you read it. My feelings won't be hurt if you didn't, but I wrote a blog about CenarioVR and how I built a course in like a half an hour, and it was so cool to make a course of my backyard that nobody cares about. But I thought it was cool and it was unique. And on that note, I'll go ahead and pass the presentation over to you, Bill, to tell us more about Lectora-19.
Thank you very much. I assume you can see my desktop here. I got a PowerPoint presentation up. You guys see that? That's
what I see.
Awesome. Okay, so that basically is what we're going to make an attempt to at least touch on today. So Lectora-19 came out. It's got some pretty cool things. I've been asked to get in there and play around with them and show you folks a sneak peek of what is awesome in there, and really just how kind of great that tool is coming along. So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're mostly going to focus on this left column here, the major additions, and I'm going to try to get through most of these. But the way that we're going to do it today, and I'm not going to give you a presentation in PowerPoint, walking through saying, hey, this is what we built into the tool and this is what we're offering. I'm going to go ahead and just pop into Lectora-19 and start running through some of these major additions. And if we can get through it, maybe we'll get into some of the awesome updates as well. But chances are we'll, like I was saying, we'll probably stay on that left side and get through some of these kind of more critical elements on the left column. So course starters have been added to Lectora. Icon library, image library, video assets, things like that. We've got a cutout people characters library in there. There's also a timeline. custom button states, CenarioVR integrations, screen recorder, translation tool, XLIFF support, text-to-speech sample rate's been edited. There's a bunch of really cool things that have come out in this particular update, this version of Lectora. So yeah, anyway, let's just jump in there and I'll show you. Okay. Once you open up Lectora 19, which I've already done just to save a little bit of time here, you're gonna get, our opening loading screen. That's pretty similar to how it has been in the past, right? Down here, we've got our recent files, links, we've got a browse button. We can also turn this off at startup if we want. And kind of the familiar things from previous versions of Lectora as well on the right side here, right? Create a new title, import PowerPoint, get your help. But right off the bat, there are a couple pretty obvious changes to this first panel you see as well. First and foremost, obviously, there's some pretty nifty eLearning Brothers branding in there, which I like to see. But right below it, in this new section here, this Create Inspired Learning block, we've given you direct links to Lectora eLearning templates from the eLearning Brothers library that you can now download directly into your course to get started immediately with a single click. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to choose this FIRA course right here and go ahead and download it and open it. And the way that it'll work is once it's done doing its thing, I'm going to have a perfectly functional, ready to go course starter that I can base my project on and get up and moving in a jiffy. All right, so course starter, cool, right? Like one of the features is that Lectora 19 now includes course starters. So what does that really mean? Well, if you're not familiar with course starters, you can kind of get a really quick at-a-glance view of it just by looking at the title explorer, right? There's a lot going on in this thing. It's a starter file, it's a template, but it's not a one-off template. Course starters are themed, branded, beautiful Lectora projects that contain pretty much all you really need to get a pretty good course going in record time. So by and large, they include the same types of elements. Same number of elements, same types of elements, maybe different variations, but 5 layouts, right? That may be 5 different layouts varying on the course starter itself, but you'll get 5 layouts that you can mix and match, play with, copy, paste, do what you need in the course. Similarly, there's going to be 4 interactions that come with a course starter and a test. That test will have a quiz intro page, 5 questions that are built-in Lectora questions, set up with feedback ready to go for you, and a test pass and test fail page. But it's not quite as simple as that. We also, in a course starter, include a whole lot of assets that are all branded to match that course starter. So for instance, additional icons, right? In this click to reveal that we've got going on over here, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. In this timeline click to reveal over here, we use icons, right? For each of these fills. Well, if you wanted to very quickly and easily go in and change what icon we were using for each of these timeline buttons to better suit what your particular project is, you can do that because of the way we built these course starters without ever even leaving the project. All you have to do is go up to your properties and adjust your fill properties here, right? And you're good to go. But kind of tying to another super awesome thing that we've done in Lectora 19 now, you can, if you want to, go outside of this course starter and use our new library integrations that we have. I'll show you guys how that works too. It's one of the big deals here. And I'm going to try to do it in a way that at least is a little cleaner to watch and kind of hopefully makes a little more sense, contextually, right? It's not just me showing you, hey, here's how you put a thing in. So for instance, this is a 50-50 layout page that I have here, and I would like to put an icon on this page to support the content that I have. And I think I also want to change this image. I'm going to do that using, like I was saying, the library integrations that we have. So icons, you want to insert one of those. It's a real simple click of a single button in the insert page. Your tools panel will open. And if you're signed in, which it's set up to eLearning Brothers, we'll go straight to the library. And you'll be able to access the icons that we have there for download and easy use into your course. I think there's somewhere like 90,000 icons that are in the library right now. So there's certainly a ton to choose from. I'm just going to click on, actually, I guess maybe we'll make this a little more random. I was thinking I had a whole project thing laid out, but then as I'm thinking about it, I think I might want to try to push through and get some more of these things shown to you. So we'll just pick a random icon instead of pushing through with this particular build. So I'm just gonna grab a laptop icon here. I'm gonna grab the PNG version, click download, and what you'll notice is that it is immediately plopped into my course. I can edit it as I choose, and obviously it'll be in my library for use later if I wanna put it somewhere else as well, okay? Similarly, if I wanted to make a quick edit to this image right here, let's say I like this young lady, she's walking around with a ukulele, but my content is relative to computer stuff, some IT, software stuff. I wanna make a change to that as well. Well, luckily, again, with the integrations, we can do the same thing. Just go to the stock image library. It's gonna function very similarly to the icons. Open up this tools tray. You're gonna navigate directly to the stock photos library where you can run a search if you'd like for an image that suits your course. And then select and insert. Exactly the same way you have with the icons. And if you'll notice, we're starting to see some movement over on the left-hand side, and there we are. We've got our new library image put directly in our course, and assuming I had content that made sense for this particular piece, we could really be done with a functional working slide right here. Okay, so icon library, image library. Just to be clear, we also have included that with videos. We have asset library. We have an audio asset library as well that you can search. But I'm also going to go ahead and just jump straight over instead to the cutout library that we've included, because that's a pretty popular one for us. We see a lot of folks that use that. So our templates, we almost always include some form of a scenario. A lot of those times they'll include people that come from our library, right? In the past, you could go out and search the eLearning Brothers library, get your cutout person, drag it back in here, or you could use the Lectora built-in, default cutout people library. Now you've got access to all of the cutout library characters from the eLearning Brothers library. It's about 100,000 different poses and images. And the way that we've set these up in Course Starters makes it very easy for you to kind of cross-reference different poses of the same character that we're already using in case you like them. So for instance, in this case, right, like I've got this young lady named Tanvi, smiling with hand on hip. If I go over to the properties and double check it, look at my image name, I can confirm Tanvi medium. Okay, so that's the file name that this character originally came from. Well, if I want to put in a new character, the same one rather, but a different pose of this character, I can go into the icon or the character library, search for the name either of that character or the full file name if I happen to have it, and I will get access to all of that particular character's different poses. So here we are, business casual version. I'm just going to choose something a little more neutral, maybe. And we can just insert her directly onto the stage as we had with the previous examples, and we're good to go. We kind of like setting it up that way for this exact reason, right? A lot of the times we'll include kind of a base image that we think works for a particular scenario. Being able to go in and do the quick cross-reference, sorry about that drag of the group there, being able to go in and do the quick cross-reference on these individual characters certainly makes it a lot easier to go in and make edits and update your characters as you see fit. Okay, now I'm gonna hop back to kind of this plain page here, and I'm gonna move on to another subject that I wanna cover, another feature. It's actually one that I wanted to immediately get into when I first got into the Lectora thing, and I was playing with sharing this one first, but I think kind of building up to some of these is better, right? So I've iced it, but I actually do think it's perhaps the biggest update that Lectora has done in this Lectora 19 update is this timeline at the bottom down here. So that's kind of a new feature built into the tool that obviously we've never had before. It may look familiar in terms of practice, right? What's the idea here? Well, Lectora has given us a timeline now that we can use to basically to trigger and sync page events, right? It's got a 1 minute default duration. and it can last 60 minutes if you want. You can modify that using the page properties. And basically the idea is that at any point in the running timeline of a given page, however long you choose to set that, you can set actions by clicking this little timed event trigger down at the bottom here and releasing this dialog to do whatever it is that you want. And that's a standard action set, right? Just like setting the action on an object, only it's based on time. Once you set that action, you can also, or even beforehand, you can either scroll up, expand this pane down here to see the entire suite of your actions and edit them individually, or if you have more than one, you can cycle through them using this little navigator in the pane here, the navigation buttons in the pane here, okay? So we got a timeline in Lectora. What does that actually matter, right? Lectora is an object-based thing. Well, there's a lot that you could probably do here. I'll be perfectly honest with you and tell you that I still haven't wrapped my brain completely around the possibilities for this in Lectora, but I think there's a lot that could be done here. So think about frame or state-based animation. You could use this for alerts. You could do things with time-bound variables. You could even change content based on progress through a page if you saw fit. There's probably a really large bit to explore here for how to really apply this particular feature in the variety of settings that we see Lectora get used. So I'm actually really stoked on this one. I'm very curious to see what users start doing with the timeline. I've come up with a handful of examples, and I'm going to share one with you in just a second. Whatever it is that you're using for, it's super easy to use though. Okay, so I'm gonna show you that, I guess, now. All right, so let's say on this page that I wanted to have a button that would perhaps bounce us to the next page, maybe, right? And I also wanted to highlight that button or trigger some sort of a prompt when the user hasn't clicked on that button in, say, the first 3 seconds of my course. Well, with the timeline button or the timeline feature, we can do that, right? We can very easily put time-bound prompts on things. I'm going to show you that though in context with another feature that's added into this version, so we can kind of jam them together and show you how they can work in concert and make some pretty cool stuff happen. So let's build that. I'm going to insert a button real fast. The first thing I'm actually going to do on this button really has almost nothing to do with the timeline itself directly. I'm going to go up to the style area here. I'm going to open this button states pane, and you'll notice this looks a little different from previous versions of Lectora, right? Previous versions, we had our states up here and we edited down. Now on this left-hand side, we've got our individual states in a list, but you've also got this plus or minus and duplicate button here. Well, that's because now we can use custom states in buttons. So no more duplicating button objects to get kind of fun tricks to go on, in Lectora as we move forward. Everything in Lectora 19 you can, from here on out, build out with custom action states to cut down, or custom button states rather, to cut down on the number of actions you have to take, objects you have to put into your course, and really streamline your development, right? So I'm going to make this a highlight state. And I'm going to give it just a nice orange fill. Okay. I'm going to go back up there and double check that. Move my button to the front. All right. There we go. Nice and saved state. So the other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and add an action to that button that adjusts a variable, right? Because we're gonna trigger this button to change states to that custom state based on our timeline, right? 3 seconds, if we haven't clicked it. So we have to be able to figure out if we've clicked it. So the first thing I need to do is add a variable to just test for that. So in my actions here on mouse click, I'm just going to go ahead and modify a variable. Variable I'm going to modify is brand new. I'm putting it in now. So I'm just going to hit new variable and call it button click. Okay, initial value will be 0, and that's fine. We're going to set it through our button here to change button click. We're going to set it to 1. Okay, so initial value is 0. If we click it, it will be 1. That'll give us our conditional for our timeline here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just click this flag icon in the bottom left of the timeline to set up my event. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just call it highlight button. I'm going to give it a name for that event, and I'm going to set the time to, let's call it 2 seconds, so we have to wait a little less. And then here in the actions, I'm going to go down and I'm going to set the state of the button. I'm going to set it to highlight. I'm going to hit OK. Oh, you know what? I forgot to add my conditionals there. So I'm going to open this back up. Okay, double check that I've got everything set up and hit always. Instead of always, we're only going to do it if button click is equal to 0, right? That would indicate they haven't clicked it. Now I'm gonna hit OK. Let's go ahead and preview, see how that works. Hopefully it does nicely for us. Oh, and there we are. If I don't click that button, we are triggering it to that same highlight state that we set previously. And if we run it, and I do click it, and we wait a couple of 4 or 5 seconds, now that that variable is enabled, right, it's set to 1, timeline is not going to auto change that. You could do that, you know, a similar thing with prompts. You could do it with, again, kind of any number of objects. I did it with the button here really so that I could piggyback on that same task and show you the other feature, right, this custom button states thing. I think there's, again, right, I haven't gotten my head completely wrapped around what I can and can't do all the way with this. I think there's a lot of possibility here, though, and I do really believe that timeline there can help streamline and make some of the things that we do in Lectora courses certainly a lot easier. So hopefully you guys enjoy that one as much as I do. I'm going to just go ahead and plow further along now, unless there's any questions. Moving back to this button thing here.
There's one quick question here, Bill.
Let's go for it.
My logo is like a shark. It's not the eLearning Brothers logo. Is that possible for me to put my logo over that eLearning Brothers logo?
So this eLearning Brothers logo right here is absolutely replaceable. So that's not built in, it's just a PNG. If you would like to change that logo, you can certainly do so. All you need to do is just go into your image library here, select whatever you'd like it to be, and change it to that, and you'll be ready to go.
Is it easy to tie that into the eLearning Brothers stock asset library? For example, if I'm a Gold Suite member, then I have access to the full eLearning Brothers asset library. So how easy is it to pull those a new graphic over from there and make that into that logo spot?
So it would be the exact same process we were showing you earlier, right? So let me show you that here real fast, right? Actually, I don't even need to import a new one. Recall that image that I had brought in previously, either the icon that I brought in earlier or that 50-50 image that we had here, right? It was the computer image. So either computer icon or computer image. Once that image is brought in to the eLearning or to your course from the eLearning Brothers library, it'll be in the exact same spot up here. All you need to do is that I was referencing in the properties pane, right? Under this image dropdown. All you should need to do is highlight that logo and then go find the one that you imported from the library, and you should be good to go. Let me double check that real fast. So the name of that was probably, yeah, there we are. So not particularly great placement because I just grabbed the stock photo that we had used earlier. But yeah, I selected the logo, went up to my drop down here, and then found that image that we had brought in previously, selected that, and it gets immediately replaced. All right. And same thing, right? Like I should probably mention it since we're asking the header background back here. If you wanted to make edits to that kind of stuff, just in terms of fill color or any of the kind of general values there, all of the stuff where we can, we try to leave everything editable in the tool.
So like general rebranding, Fira has a very stark and powerful color setup. But if I'm like, you know what, this doesn't meet, I need to rebrand it easily. Do I have to go slide by slide like individual assets, or is there a global way that I can say, okay, I need this whole thing to be a different color?
Yeah, different colors. So the way colors work in Lectora, yeah, you're going to need to change the actual page objects. So global elements or anything that's up here at the top, right? On this particular course starter, we don't have design elements that persist on every single page exactly the same way. So we've got the only global elements we really have are a nav element in the bottom. Those elements are changeable as well. And this kind of branding header stuff up at the top, right? Which has got your course title. You can set that however you see fit. It's got your background element. You can change that once, and it's got your logo. So all three of those can be changed once, and they persist globally. The bottom right navigation, it can be changed once and persist globally. But the remainder of branding elements in this particular file, yeah, you need to go kind of on a page-by-page basis. Color theming and whatnot is particular in Lectora, right? So if you go to this overlay, these overlay elements, we've got a background color one. All you need to do is go up to the properties or style on that one rather, and set it how you choose. And you can very quickly and easily affect that branding or affect that, the color palette.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Glad that was a good one. Okay, so let's go back in here. Another little, I think we perceive of it as slightly minor, but I really like it. Another really great feature in my mind is that we've included some new texture elements for you here in the, whoops, my computer is old. I apologize, folks. We've included some new texture elements in our fill styles here. So what that means is that we've got, well, sorry guys, I think between the webinar, there it is. We've got a lot of patterns that are built specifically for Lectora that you can now access. You can apply them to button fills as you choose to get some really nice, very well styled effects. That's kind of just another little add-on that I think is a hugely. I'm going to stop doing that because I keep causing a problem. But I think that's a pretty big deal. I really like using textures in where I can in my course development, and being able to apply those to a button kind of nice and easily and cleanly in Lectora. That's pretty great. Also, just the enhanced library of textures that they've given us, or well, I guess we have now to include as page backgrounds. Pretty big deal in my mind. Okay. So moving on, we did custom button states. We kind of talked about those little textural elements there. The next thing I wanted to get into, just as a, another thing that I think is a huge add-on to have in a tool, but is something that I, as a developer, obviously, it's the very beginning of this particular technology. I'm not quite there with it. It's VR. Lectora, this version has, depending on your suite, access to a really great VR authoring tool. Now, for somebody like me, like I've had in the past some questions about VR and using it in courses, and it seems like it provides a really interesting option, perhaps even more so nowadays, to do some genuinely, immersive simulation style learning, or at least something that's, I guess immersive is probably a better way to put it, something that can actually bring in your users and capture their imagination in a different way than we're normally used to doing. I've been very interested in it in the past, but I've never really had the opportunity to do anything with it, mostly due to budget. VR setup for me, my personal budget, it was a little past what the options would be, right? But with this new setup through CenarioVR that's integrated directly into Lectora, it goes a long way to getting me the option to be able to actually do some pretty great VR development, right? Just through the delivering a robust authoring tool. Now all the other setup stuff is kind of goes by the wayside in my mind. Also, since you have access to that CenarioVR tool, chosen to integrate it directly into Lectora, and it works really well. It's pretty seamless. I'm going to show you guys how to insert a VR piece into Lectora right now. It's as simple as grabbing a zip file that you export from CenarioVR and importing directly. So, you know, if this page was styled the way I wanted it to, let's say these elements were turned off, and whoops, dragged a little too far there. So this page elements were turned off, and I had just a nice blank page there. I could very quickly and easily get myself a working simulation popped into this page without a ton of effort. All I have to do is just export from the VR tool and then import right into here, and it works remarkably well typically. I've run a few in here and run them through my device, and they are pretty great. So let's get into showing that, since I don't know what I just did there. Apologies. My computer is bugging out on me. All right, that's what happened. I clicked the wrong thing. If I were to drag this over and just hit view preview, that way you can get a quick view of how easily this stuff integrates. So without any setup, other than
And I can assure you that it only appears choppy when he's dragging it around because we're playing it through GoToWebinar, which only captures like 5 frames per second.
Yeah, apologies for that. Sometimes it gets a little fuggy when we got the webinar going. I think the kind of point should be clear on that one, right? In my mind, that's a pretty huge deal coming out of Lectora there. You know, aside from, I mentioned earlier, just getting access to the authoring tool, aside from getting access to an authoring tool to be able to do VR authoring, being able to just seamlessly, cleanly integrate it into your primary course authoring or a primary course authoring tool without having to go deal with hosting and all the other stuff, that's pretty great to me.
So a couple questions about that. Now, we're probably going to have a whole webinar. I mean, we already have lots of webinars about CenarioVR, but moving forward, we might have even more about this integration in particular. But we do have questions about utilizing that CenarioVR capability here. One, does it have to be hosted? Your project in the video, does it have to be hosted? How is that packaged? Is it a SCORM zip, or you know, how is that managed?
Okay, so I'm going to talk to just how I did it here, because there are other options, I'm sure. So this is just a straight it's a straight zip export from CenarioVR, okay? And you're embedding it just directly as pretty much it looks like a CenarioVR object, if that's that's kind of the easiest way for me to think about it. You mentioned the SCORM stuff. There are a few variables, and I think maybe this is probably what the question was getting at. There are a couple variables that are included when you include a CenarioVR element. So I'm going to do that, and then I can show you those variables and how they pop up rather than just talk at them. So let me browse here again. I'll pick Corals of the Caribbean, and it's an HTML5 package. All right, so if you go into the variables after you do that, you insert a CenarioVR element, you're going to notice that there are 3 new variables, at least that are in there, okay? So you get a CenarioVR scenario duration, CenarioVR scenario result, and CenarioVR scenario score. So you can use those variables to track the score, to track the result, and to track the duration. You can use those variables for those 3 things and perform actions based on them, right? So let's say you wanted to put that in as a portion of your course, not the entire course, but a portion of your course. Maybe it's a branching course. You give the option to go through a standard course and go through. You could absolutely, if the learner just chose to go through that branching side, I would imagine you could use that CenarioVR result and score variable there to feed some SCORM data if you so need it. That may be a bit of a roundabout answer, but I'm hoping that kind of gets to what the main piece of the question was there.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
And there are some more questions about VR, but I think for today, we're gonna move on and go back into the Lectora 19, and we're gonna just stay posted with eLearning Brothers, and we'll post more CenarioVR stuff and answer your questions. And
Yeah,
some of you will reach out to you directly afterwards.
most certainly. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's the VR thing is certainly that is a world of itself, and it's yeah, I'm still figuring out how to wrap my brain around possibilities there. But suffice to say, there's a lot to learn for I think everybody in the space across the board. So all right, I'm gonna move on to one additional feature here, and then we're probably just gonna stop because we're butting up against, yeah, it's been 40 minutes of me working through this, and we'll probably have some more questions, or hopefully we do. So the last thing I want to just highlight as far as what I think is a great huge feature in this version of Lectora is that there's a new screen recorder. And so, you know, it previously came with TechSmith Camtasia, right? That's not included in 19. Instead, there is a new screen recording tool that is, if you're not familiar with Camtasia, it is far simpler to use and quicker. And I've got too many things running. I just caused my machine to decide to be unhappy. So I guess I'll pop that open and talk about it. So yeah, so there's a new screen recording tool. You can get it in the tools ribbon. I'll pop that open and show it again. It's a much lighter weight version of kind of, I guess I don't want to say it's a lighter weight version of Camtasia, but it's a lightweight, though robust, screen recording tool. It also has an editor in it, okay? So if we're over here, right, and where was I? Screen recording, you can launch the screen recording tool that way as well. And again, my machine is getting unhappy, so I apologize, guys. I need to reboot this thing. We'll just move on for the day and look at some of these kind of additional updates and get into some questions then. So since I'm bugging out here, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint and talk about a couple more of these things just real quickly. Two big major ones for me: text-to-speech sample rate, but specifically the XLIFF support. So if you do translations, the Lectora 19 includes support for the XLIFF format when you're using the translation tool. So that's a big deal. I used to have to do a lot in a previous life. I used to have to do a lot of translation support, and that can be certainly a challenge. Just being able to import, export that format, standardized format, so that's a big deal. I'm pretty happy to see that one in there. All right, so the awesome updates. I'm just going to briefly cover these, and then we'll get into the questions. You have accessible lightbox pop-ups now. So if you're using actual pop-up lightbox pop-ups, those elements, right, they retain accessibility settings, tab order, all that is properly done now in that pop-up. No issues with 508. Similarly, we have custom form elements like custom radio boxes, custom check boxes. Those all support 508 requirements, and you can use them in accessible titles now. And similarly, we've got updated desktop and mobile, publishing sizing options. And then we've got those page background fills that I was mentioning with the same kind of general approach as we had in the buttons there. You can apply those to page backgrounds and get some really nice effects in your published course. So that's the bulk of it there for today. I would say there's a lot in there to play with. There's a lot to learn, and I'm pretty excited about a lot of these changes because I do think they have the capability to really enhance the Lectora courses that we're producing. So with that,
awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Any other questions?
Got a couple more questions here.
Perfect.
So when I'm developing in Lectora 19 and I pull in my cutout characters or my images or wherever from eLearning Brothers, but I'm making a responsive course, do I need to get different sized images as I'm considering creating for responsive, or will Lectora be sizing these for me?
Well, so yeah, Lectora does some auto resizing for you. If you're working with one of our course starters, we've already resized and repositioned those for you in the different breakpoint views. But in general, if you're just talking about an asset, there will be some amount of adjustment that Lectora will do automatically for you for your layouts. And I'm going to bounce over to this one-to-one scenario interaction and turn some of these layers off just so you can see how we've adjusted that already for you in those views. All right. Okay.
Okay, I think that answers the question. The next one, with the screen recorder, we have a couple questions in regards to the screen recorder.
Mm-hmm.
With Camtasia or other video editors, Adobe Premiere Pro or whatever, I can take a screen recorded video and add it with another video that I pull in from elsewhere, say, the eLearning Brothers stock video library. If I want to pull something in, is the screen recorder that is included also an editor to the point where I can bring in external footage and edit that in?
That's a great question. I haven't used it that way. I'll have to play with it and find out is the honest answer that I'm going to have to give you. Or we can also address that with the technical folks on the side and get you a clear answer from them as well.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned it's not coming with Camtasia. Does it come with Snagit still, or is Camtasia and Snagit and all of the TechSmith tools, have they been removed?
So they're not currently included with the package, but if you do a parallel install, 19 and 18 or whatever previous version you had, and you happen to have those TechSmith tools, you can keep those open as long as you need, and you're not gonna lose them.
Okay, excellent. There's a couple questions about Lectora Online versus Lectora Desktop. Here's this question. Can you talk about the integration or the use of Lectora Online and Lectora Desktop in the Gold and Premium plans? Do the two work separately or integrated together? What's the benefits of one or the other? If you've got that information.
Yeah, I mean, as far as it pertains directly to the plans and kind of pricing and budget, I can't really talk very well to that. I can talk to how they work just as tools and how as a developer they work together for me.
Sure.
They are two standalone tools, all right, but they integrate in terms of import and export, right? So you can import a Lectora desktop file. You can import a Lectora online file to desktop rather. You can export templates from both. I mean, they are kind of interoperable, changeable, whatever. The real differences in my mind is just it's the platform and where it is. I bounce it back and forth between the tools a lot. I tend to sometimes, I'll just be honest with you, sometimes I prefer to develop in Lectora Online because it's, up to this point, they were basically the same program. And it's fast, it's easy. I don't need to worry about platform, right? I don't have to develop on a PC, et cetera. But I like kind of the setup of desktop as well. So it really just depends on what my needs for development are. There are certain functions and features in desktop, especially now, that aren't yet there in Lectora Online and maybe down the road. But for instance, the timeline. If I had a need to simplify development and start syncing things to page events rather than some of the other ways I might do them. I can do that in desktop, but I can't do it online yet. So I would obviously develop here as opposed to there. Frankly, it just gives you more flexibility in my mind with where, how, and when you can author your content. Now, that being said, flexibility end of it, and I'll try to wrap this up. One of the things that Lectora Online does offer that is significant, it is different than Lectora Desktop, is you can do collaborative team content building in Lectora Online. So whereas desktop is a standalone file, right, and you need to pass that file back and forth or however you handle it if you're working on a team for a given set, desktop project. Online, if your integration is, or if you're set up for this, you can have teams and share, check in, check out a course back and forth with one another, kind of do some co-development. So I tend to like online sometimes for that purpose as well. It really, there are just a few differences between the tools that may make one or the other more valuable to you as a personal, as just an individual developer.
Okay, and then the last question that we'll take. Okay, just kidding. There's two more questions. So I'm ready to upgrade to Lectora 19, but I have a ton of old course content that I developed in Lectora 18. Will it load and function correctly in Lectora 19?
Everything that I have loaded and brought in so far to Lectora 18 or to Lectora 19 from 18 has been no problem whatsoever.
No problems as of yet.
No problems as of yet.
Should all work.
It should all work. Yeah, I mean, so we've brought in a large number of Lectora course starters that were built in actually they were originally built in online, and then we brought them into 18 to test that process. We exported them from 18 and then brought both sets of those files into 19 to test both instances, and both seem to have worked fine. So yeah, not only should the 18 files work, but obviously the online imports well too.
Excellent. Do you know if any new standards have been added on Lectora 19, like CMI5 or XAPI?
Well, we have XAPI in Lectora since certainly 17, I think. And I can show you that real fast. It's actually the easiest of any of the tools to use. XAPI in Lectora is because it's built in. Whereas in Storyline, and I mean built in terms of custom statements, right? So in Storyline and Captivate, aside from your quiz question statements, you have XAPI statements that are experience statements. Well, in Lectora, we actually have the ability to send statements as just a built-in trigger that have whatever verb tied to them you want. So it's beyond just the experience statement, right? That kind of thing you'd need to do custom in Storyline and Captivate, which we do, and we've been doing that for a while in our templates. It is far easier to handle in Lectora because you get drop downs, right? So that's in there. Out of the box, even if you aren't actually. So, and just to be clear, I was highlighting this begin button here to show you that we incorporate XAPI into our course starters as well. So like this is just a downloaded course starter. This begin button has a statement on it that says that you launched this page. By default, even if you're not putting those custom statements in there or using our course starters that have them, Lectora does publish XAPI statements if you publish via XAPI. So you would need to save it. That's fine. Okay. And then when you go to publish it, you just set it up in your XAPI options here. So you go to XAPI options, a couple little quick notes. If you prompt to restore the last viewed location in the LRS, that's how you get your experience statements. Activity ID, activity name, activity description, all right here, and you can tie that in with your launch path and get fully reporting XAPI right out of the box.
Awesome.
Yep.
I got an answer back from one of the developers, Joe, about importing video. So not just screen captured video that can you import video into the screen recording video editor? And the answer is yes. So you can edit it in the video editor and then upload it into Lectora. So that is a capability. And then a couple questions. I know we said we weren't going to take any more, but there's just some really good ones here.
Let's go
Let's
for it.
say I am upgrading to 19 from an older version of Lectora than the previous.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a guarantee that it will work, or what kind of potential changes am I looking at?
It's a great question. I don't have an answer for you. So could maybe that person chime in with what version they're talking about moving up from?
This person in particular mentioned, for example, Lectora Inspire. Let's say it's 2 versions old.
2 versions old. I mean, yeah, it's a great question. We could probably do some testing here or check with our engineers and see if they have anything to say. I just haven't imported anything from 17 or so.
Sure.
Yeah.
I imagine that in most cases it should work, but a couple things might not with new features and
there may be some small like you're saying, there may
any
be some.
version update of software.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to take the screen back from you, Bill.
Please do.
And there we go. So just a reminder, there's still a lot of questions coming in for people asking, you know, I might want to upgrade, or I just recently purchased and I want to upgrade. I don't want to have to pay any extra, or I'm curious about multiple license costs. I'm curious, you know, if I'm already paying this, how is my pricing going to change? All of those questions can be answered by reaching out to your individual account executive, your sales rep. If you do not know who your sales rep is, please just call the number here on the screen on the right, the 801-796-2767, and we can get you routed to the right person. If you don't want to bother with a phone call, you can also send us an email at info@elearningbrothers.com or sales@elearningbrothers.com. There's a lot of information on the website at elearningbrothers.com. In fact, let me see if I can. We have a section for Lectora users in particular already on the Authoring Suites site. So if you come to elearningbrothers.com/authoring suites, just find the Authoring Suites. Right below these tables where they're giving you the features tables, we have an existing customer with questions and FAQ page. You can check that out. There's several questions there that we can, you know, if you're already an Asset Library subscriber, if you're a Lectora customer, maybe you're already using CenarioVR, we've got lots of places for you to get your questions answered there. So by all means, check it out there and give us a call. Thank you, Bill, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on this webinar. We hope it was useful for you and valuable, and we hope to see you in future webinars. Thanks a lot. See you later.